following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi, this is Ken Gage, and this is The Art of Politics. And I always start by saying there's no show like this because it's a Republican and a Democrat, and we all know Republicans are, Democrats are absolutely wonderful. And when I usually say this, Al Baldessaro, who is the co-host, will say something obscene, and that's how our show begins. Well, Al is gone. We shot him, and no, he's fine. We believe he's probably with Trump, traveling the country, but he said he's on vacation. So today we have somebody who I think is extremely important, and he does too. How are you?
Ken, thank you.
And
Thanks for having me.
Representative Danielson from
Bedford, New Hampshire.
And you are on what committee?
I'm on the Finance Committee, and I'm also co-chair of the Legislative Committee to study the economic impact of arts in the economy.
No, you're chair. There are two chairs. Right. Remember that.
Right.
You have to understand that if we're running it, we can do anything we want to a degree. Right. But studying the economic impact of the arts and culture. How do they get culture in there?
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, you're the one who wrote the bill, so I'm assuming that you had some kind of idea of what you expected to have.
I didn't want culture. Van put it in.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I was appointed after the bill has been passed, so it was kind of, I said to you, I got this note in the mail that said, you are now a member of this commission.
And the interesting part of this is we agreed, you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and we wanted two full chairs, which is very unusual, okay? But we wanted the Republican and we wanted the Democrat. We wanted people to understand that the arts are, far more important than a party.
Right, that's correct.
And that's why we did it. So you have done half the meetings I'm going to do. Some more, you'll probably do a couple more meetings, and then we're going to have to write a report, which ought to be fun. But let's learn a little bit about you. This is is this your first term on finance?
It's my first term on finance.
Now you're a Division I.
Right.
And you're vice chair.
Right.
Big deal.
Well, yeah, I guess if you look from that perspective, it's.
What's so big about it?
Well, I think finance, the Finance Division I, folks should know that the Finance Committee is divided into three areas. Division III handles only the Department of Health and Human Services. So health and social issues are in legislation that comes to that is in Division III. Division II handles education, safety, transportation are in their quarter, and then 37 agencies come to Division I.
37?
Right. So we look at 37 different budgets. The biggest of which, the two largest, are the Department of Administrative Services and the Department of Corrections
Are the biggest
are the
budget.
biggest pieces of our budget.
Wow.
Yep.
So I'm in commerce and we're pretty busy, but you're really busy.
Well, it divides up, Ken, as you know. The folks in finance work very hard on when the two-year session, when we start our session and
Yeah.
the budget starts to get prepared.
Yeah?
The committees stay pretty busy from the time that we start the session until the budget has been given to the House.
How many days a week?
I would say it averaged probably 3.5 to 4. We had a couple of days where we came in on Saturday, but not many. But during that early period, we can go 3 to 4 days a week, easy. And usually that starts out at 9 and goes to 4:30 or 5.
Wow. I guess you are earning your money.
Yes.
Yeah, huh?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
we're-
Our $100.
we're all earning
Our
that.
$100 a year. Yes.
No, that's really,
Yes.
you know, I had a friend who because we don't think much, we're state representatives were voted in. Okay, you go up there, there's 400 of us, all of a sudden, it doesn't mean much to us, right? So Belanger, who's a Republican, ends up in the hospital in Mass General. All of a sudden, well, one doctor, one nurse, all of a sudden they find out he's a state representative. All of a sudden there's 2 doctors, 2 nurses, so they representative, and he's trying to explain to him up in New Hampshire, we don't think it's a big deal because we do it for $100.
It was the first time, actually, when I was talking to some of our colleagues, and the first time I realized that someone said, well, it's a volunteer legislature. And I thought, you know, it truly is. I mean, I served on the Bedford Town Council for 12 years. I served on the planning board for 8 years prior to that. So, you know, when you think about it being volunteer, it truly is a volunteer house. The folks aren't coming there for the money for the most part. They're there to try to make a contribution to the state, what they feel is going to be a contribution to their community. So it's an interesting perspective. When you talk to folks from other parts of the country and they find out that you have 400 members, the first thing they do is go, how do you do that? That must be pandemonium. And I said, no, you know, if Thomas Jefferson dropped into the House of Representatives in New Hampshire, he'd say, this is exactly what I thought it would be. Not quite as efficient as I thought it would be, but it's about
Well, I don't know. I think it's
Same.
I think it's far more efficient. But I always say there's really about 150 people who really do a lot of
It's
work.
true in every group, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, one third of the folks who belong to any kind of club, it's usually a third of those folks do the work.
Yeah, they do. But then we need to try to get them to vote the way we want. That's the way it is. Being a Republican up there and being in the majority, how do you find that? Now, this is your first time in finance. You were, this is your second term, though.
Right, right. I was in municipal and county committee my first term.
Yeah.
And that was because, basically, I assume that was because of the experience I had with 12 years on the town council and
Yeah.
very active in Southern New Hampshire planning, our regional planning organization. I've been in that for over 20 years. So I think that was the reason I had an assignment to municipal and county. And that was in the minority party. The Dems were in charge of the House at that time.
That's correct, yeah.
And now we're in the majority this time through. So it's been an interesting perception of watching how the things change and the effects of the different management styles. It's interesting.
I've been through 2 of them.
Mhm.
We're in the majority, majority, and now we're in the minority. And
Right.
now we're both up for re-election.
Right.
We're both running again.
Right.
And so I have a feeling politically, by the way, I want people to know that you do a television show yourself called
The Long View, thank you. Yeah, The Long View. It's on, you can actually see it. People can access Bedford, bctv.org. And if they go on there, they'll find that there's a program called The Long View. They scroll over and find The Long View, and they go down, and I think there's like 16 or 17 programs that are, 19, I'm sorry, there are 19 programs over the last few years that have been recorded. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, you invited me up there, and I caused so much trouble that I thought
It didn't cause any trouble. It was a good discussion. What we discussed was arts and where folks could develop arts and what businesses would be, what buildings would be good for arts, and what locations would be good for arts. In fact, right after we left, as you recall, right after we left, we went down the street to one of the buildings in town.
That's right.
One of the old schoolhouses.
That's right.
Take a look at the schoolhouse to see how that would be, how it could be used.
And how is that going to be used?
Well,
you know?
It was predetermined. The folks who are doing it right now are looking at it, and they've got a predetermined use as to how they want to use it. Our suggestion was, after our conversation, was because the west side of the building is exposed virtually to light. I mean, the whole west side of the building is sunshine. So we said, you ought to think about maybe subdividing this room into 3 different studios, and you could rent out those 3 different studios. That's a possibility. Again, I think what we were doing was challenging the preconceived notion of what they think that the building ought to be used for. So one of the guys that was with us is on that committee, so hopefully he'll keep that conversation going.
To get that. Well, we've talked about this before, and I have mentioned it in the show before. Lowell, Massachusetts is a population of 111,000. We are 1.3 in New Hampshire. Lowell, Massachusetts has in the city
1.3 million.
Yes, 1.3 in New Hampshire. Lowell, Massachusetts has 350 working studios, meaning artists pay rent. I don't think I can find 200 in all of New Hampshire.
Well, again, I'm not sure of that. I have no way of knowing exactly, nor do you, I guess, of how many studios there are in New Hampshire.
I can only tell you, this being the second largest city, we just lost,
Right.
I think, 40 in the Picker building.
Right.
Which so now we're looking.
Right. In New Hampshire, in Manchester has a number, and Concord has a number, I'm told. But then the young lady who sits on our committee or our commission, who is responsible to the New Hampshire Arts, the Arts and Crafts Guild, told us that she used the number 700. She has 700 members.
No, they have 700 members, but...
And she said, so if you looked at those as potential studios, there's potentially 700 studios. But again, what defines a studio as far as those folks are concerned?
And I've defined it by saying artist pays rent.
Right.
So I have an art studio at my house. Well, so is that I don't pay rent? Well, I pay taxes, of course, or try to.
Shouldn't you be paying rent to yourself?
No, I should. Yeah, probably.
I mean, it is a business.
Well, hold on a second.
Perhaps we should check on this.
Yeah, if I divide, let me see, 100 to a year, I don't think, maybe about 50 cents,
Should be
a year or something like that. Yeah.
Should be looking into that.
Yeah, I think they should have the IRS right after me. I mean, geez, they're going to find a whole.
No, I'm thinking of it as benefit.
Benefit.
You should probably look at it for a tax benefit.
I don't pay taxes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wow. Another issue you ought to bring up.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should do that. But I already don't like you. You've already started trouble. This show's only begun. But my point is made, is that New Hampshire is so far behind other states. Now, I've got to tell you about...
Again, I'll challenge that statement. I don't know how you would know that. I know you have figures that tell you certain information.
Oh, should I bring my figures out? I'm good at this.
Well, you can do that, but again, I don't know how you can do that because, as you know, we've had a difficult time ascertaining what is the impact in New Hampshire. So when you go and say, well, we're behind somebody else, how do you know that? Because we don't have a number. So, and how do you determine the accuracy of some other state? I don't know that we take it for granted that that's what they have. I don't know how you do that. So I would say we're probably not as demonstrative as some other states are with our promoting of arts, but I don't think we're that promotive of our culture either.
You know something? I'm an artist, as you know. I hear what you're saying, and I wish, from all the research I have done, I wish I could say that you're half correct, but you're not. And the problem is that if you look at how the arts are looked at from the outside, you'll see that we are, for giving money to the arts, 45th in the United States. Okay? Now, as you know, I've done some research, and I realize, because of how the money is distributed, we're down at 47. So when I say we're not doing that good in the arts, the states that contribute to the arts are looked at by major companies and corporations when they're coming into a state to put businesses up. You're looked at by art groups around the country. You're looked at artists who may want to get into some sort of a community. We do have something going on, but not like the other states.
But again, just to challenge that again, is you used right there, you just used 4 or 5 different measures. I don't know how you would measure some of those things. How artists measure the state against what? I'm not sure which. And what do they call art? How do they define art? And you and I have talked about that without getting into that long conversation. What is art? I mean, we look at it from the performance arts, those kinds of things. Yeah. So, how does one look at that? And so I think it's a little difficult. I think one of the things we should look at is the resurgence, I think, or hopefully the resurgence of folks who want to get involved in the arts. We were talking earlier about the idea of arts being used for health.
Correct.
In trying
right? Yes, yes.
Well, we've been exposed to some of the things at Arts in Prison to try to help prisoners act out some of the animosities that they have, and trying to use it as a therapeutic type of tool.
Right.
So there's different ways of looking at arts. There's different ways of measuring art. So I don't know if your statement that it's not good is valid.
Well, Dave, listen. I don't care.
It is to you, perhaps.
I don't care how you look at it.
Okay. So you're going to be right then.
No, I'm absolutely right, and he's absolutely wrong, because this is my show, and I will cut out. No, of course I won't do that. I could, but I won't do that. Look, I have to. You and I have to look at this not as one thing. You've got to look at it in its totality. You just have to look at all of the state of New Hampshire. When you have one city that shows how one city, when it completely gets together, what can happen. 300, actually there's more, it's about 400. And they say that, and there's more, if you have 400 working studios, many of them have 2 people in the studios. They say they got approximately 900 artists in this city. One city of 111,000. That's so far incredibly Assyrian. What is it saying? I'm not working for you. It's not a studio. I tried to turn this thing off, and it won't go off. Anyway. When you see how that takes place, what happens in one city, and by the way, one has to know that Lowell is a city that's studied. No city is like this in the United States.
I don't know that either.
Well, I take my word, because the research that I've done on it.
That's your show, so I have to take your word.
That's correct. He does. Although I have a feeling he's going to put some things in his show in it. Well, how it happened was there was a politician called Tsongas.
Sure.
Okay? He's from Lowell. And if anyone knows Lowell, you'll realize that Lowell was a tough city. So he said, we're going to base bringing our economy back on the arts. We believe that arts creates culture. Culture will bring businesses into the city. Little did he know that they would form one of the strongest bonds of artists in one area. People from Boston are coming down to use the studios. In fact, I think they have 20 of them live in studios. So that is something that I always use this as an example against New Hampshire, all right? But one has to realize it's a phenomena. Lowell is a phenomena. But we need that type of energy up here. And we have to stop thinking that we are really, really terrific when it comes to caring for the arts. We're not.
Well, again, I disagree with and this is because of what I've learned since I've been on the commission, is that when I first was assigned to the commission, my look was, okay, so we're going to look at New Hampshire, the arts in New Hampshire. And as I've said to you, I've come to learn that arts in New Hampshire isn't New Hampshire. It's actually probably 5 or 6 different regions that generate arts. For example, and one of the things that I would take issue with is we're small. We do things in a smaller scale. So you go over to Rollinsford. If you're familiar with where Rollinsford is, over by Milton, which is just a little north of Dover. But Rollinsford has a pretty thriving arts colony. Now you say, well, how thriving is it? It's small. It's not 900. It's not 800. But the fact is they've rented all of their space over there. Now, so you look at that, and you have some other places.
Rollinsford also has a coffee shop within it and stuff like that.
Oh, it's down the street. Rollinsford is an old mill town, as most of our towns are.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
It's an old mill town, and I think you actually have to go across the river to get to the coffee shop, and across the river over there means over into Maine. But it's a little small town down there. Now, if you go over to, you look at Dover, Dover's arts have really done well as well. I maintain that's because folks are able now to come up from Massachusetts on the train, and they're using that as an opportunity to develop that kind of business. I'm trying to think of the name of St. Cyran's? St. Killeran up in Berlin. That's developed a whole new art culture is there. What's the name of the art studio over in Lebanon? Ken, you're in this business. You should know these things.
Excuse me. All I know are numbers.
They
won't allow me over
there. They have a 4-story building, and she's got it rented entirely out. She has a studio, not a studio, but a shop on the first floor, and then on each succeeding floor, it's been rented out to artists. So I disagree with, you look at from a Lowell standpoint, but we're not Lowell. We're 1.3 million people of very individual backgrounds, and not all of them full time.
And let me just stop you for a moment, okay? We don't have 350 working studios.
I don't know that.
Yeah, I do.
I don't.
Nashville's the second largest city. I don't think we have 25 in it. I really don't, after the Pickering
I just
building.
have no way to
How
challenge
many does
that.
Manchester have?
I don't have no way to challenge. I don't know.
Okay, so if you take,
How many Concord have?
if you take,
How many does Portsmouth have?
Manchester and you take Nashua, we're 200,000 people, and we don't have 100 working studios?
I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea to measure that.
All right. I
know that you're fascinated with Lowell, and you're a Lowell aficionado.
I want some information how they do it. That's what I want to do, because we're working on a commission, and the only thing that I can see is all they want to do is renew the commission so we can study it more. And I'm saying, hey, we got numbers enough where we can do something.
So we should have an answer then.
An answer, yes. No, you'll never have an answer on everything. Oh. We will never do that.
I thought that was your implication.
It's ongoing. It's a work in progress. But if you take a look at, and by the way, this is a 2-part series that you'll be here next week, and we'll be talking basically almost about the same thing. And we'll probably talk maybe next week more about the numbers, which I think are very important. But this is your first, you've never done anything in arts.
That's correct.
All right?
That's
Never.
absolutely correct. Right. All I am is an observer.
So you're basically being educated.
Oh, absolutely.
So then why don't you listen to your teacher?
As in the market
Yoda
itself.
over here.
Well, one assumes that you have to go out and learn on your own. So I've tried to, as you know. I've tried to, since I've been involved with it, tried to study and try to learn. Tried to look at some other folks and what they've done. I've gone out and done some of the statistical analysis, as you have. The first realization I had was that New Hampshire is not one cultural element, but rather a number of cultural elements. I mean, for example, a lot of people looked at Portsmouth and said Portsmouth is the area. I disagree with that. I don't think Portsmouth is the area. I found that southwestern New Hampshire has a lot more going on than I ever knew. I found out that, again, Berlin, up that area, up in the north part of the country, has a lot going on. The St. Kiernan's Art Center that they put together, an old church. Tremendous amount of activity going on that I never knew of. And I know through our conversations that you were unaware of, even though you're in the business, that you weren't aware of some of the things that are going on. The Concord area has a lot, but you'd expect the Concord area to have a lot.
Yes.
And then
Concord gets too much, in my opinion.
and then in the centers of population, Manchester and Nashua, you do see. One of the things I think that in Nashua that I've been impressed with, and again I've shared this with you offline, is that that it's done a great deal of work trying to get the street artists involved,
Yes.
and some of those are minorities.
Yes.
And I think it's done a fantastic job.
Yes.
I've attended a couple of those
Yes.
events, and I'm impressed with that. I've not seen that happen in Manchester.
Yes.
And certainly Manchester has its share of minorities that it could involved in the arts if it would. I have seen on a couple of occasions performance arts in Manchester where the cultures have had their days, like in the park, usually in August. They have a couple of days for Caribbean cultures
Yep.
or Latin American culture.
Yep.
And they have a tremendous amount of performance arts that are going on. So I know that that's there, but you don't see it outside of that. You don't see it generated, where I do see it here in Nashua, which I think is an interesting thing. I don't see it in Portsmouth.
Well, Nashua, no, well, Portsmouth is, I won't say the bright light, I'll say candlelight. Because what Portsmouth is, it's a small area, but it's so round that everybody can live close to it and go into it. So that, to me, Portsmouth is a large area. It's just not this one little small place.
I think Nashua is a place where, I mean, certainly you can get folks from Hollis to come over. You get folks to Salem to come
See,
over.
Hollis has got a great art, got some great artists.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean,
Yeah.
so you know, Nashua itself, I think, is divided, is sent so that it can draw. Like, probably draw some folks from northern Massachusetts. I know
Yeah, well,
in the arts, I know
well,
the movie festivals that we've talked about.
Right.
The Jewish Movie Festival
Correct.
draws a tremendous amount of its audience from the northern part of Massachusetts.
That's correct.
And eastern New York. So, you know, it's a dynamic, New Hampshire is a dynamic place for the arts. The problem is, as you and I know, is we haven't measured it to determine how.
Let me
it
tell you
is.
how wrong you are, but I'm not going to tell you how wrong you are right now because we've got about 53 seconds. How can people get in touch with you?
The best way to do would be d.danielson, DANIELSON, @ Comcast.net.
Okay, are you on any Twitter or any
No.
Facebook?
Facebook, I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook as David Danielson, but be careful because there's a number of David Danielsons. If you go on Facebook, I think you'll be amused. My son and I are pictured together in rather period costume.
Wait a minute. We don't have much time. This is a two-part show. We're going to be back, and I'm going to tell him how bad he is. We're going to see him next week. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Next week. Thanks.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.